Right, and I'm back. Now we're just going to deal with the aspect of the textures which fall outside of Blender. So I use GIMP. Those of you who use Photoshop, then I presume you'll know how to go about the various layering processes and masking processes in Photoshop. I'll basically be outlining what I'm doing. So though the keystrokes and that will obviously be different, then the theory is there. First thing I do is I choose Open as Layers, then go to the directory where I've saved both my UV layouts and my appropriate image maps. I've got several here. What I'm going to do is basically I'm just going to select the lot of them and import them as layers. Some of them I don't actually need, simply because they are actually duplicates of duplicates of stuff I've already got. So if I turn all of these off, for example, I just turn all of this off. Right. So basically that was my original details map as pulled in from as baked rather, which is what I showed you in one of the previous tutorials. I then modified it to look like that. I did another version of it like that, so see, subtle difference. That was just all carpet inside, and headlights and tail lights are different, dashboard is different, and the underside is different. So anywho, so that's basically my detail map. I created a specular map from that. As you can see, that was from the original. It doesn't line up exactly with this one. And then there's just the wireframe. And what I normally do with this is go into colours and just invert, so my wireframes are in white. Likewise, if I select that one, I'm using Shift and click button there to isolate the layer, and again colours, invert, and that's just my original skin UV map. That was the first iteration of the skin I did, and then that was the second one, which was a somewhat more decal work going on it. Excuse me. Right, so the first thing you've got to do is you've got to think about your alpha channel. Now, as it stands, if we select this and we choose Add Layer Mask, and I pull it from the alpha channel, and then I show that mask, then there's your alpha channel. It's a flat out black and white. Now, as far as Trackmania is concerned, black is totally diffuse, pure white is 100% glossy, and so instead of having your layer mask determine the transparency within Trackmania, it actually determines the glossiness. So what you can do is you can either just texture that as you see fit, or I can, if I delete the layer mask and I add the layer mask as a grayscale copy of the layer, now you can see immediately that it looks different. So basically all the bright stuff is glossy, grey is partly glossy, black is not glossy at all. So I can do things, for example, like I can get the colour, and I can, if I chose to sort of make the, I'll use a fill on this. Where's defill? There's defill. And I could just, I can say, well, actually I want these here to be slightly glossier than the bodywork, but not completely glossy. And you know, again, I can zoom in here, and I could do it for this text. Like that, and then I could say, actually, what I want here is I want sections of this to be purely black. I mean, some of this, obviously it would be better just painting, but you get the idea. That's basically what I'm driving at. So I'd do that, choose a brush, shrink it right down, and then just sort of draw over it roughly. Because don't forget, this isn't your actual decal, this isn't what you're seeing, this is just the glossiness level. So if it is slightly different, it's not going to be catastrophic in terms of the way it looks. It just affects the glossy levels that are being worked on. So I'm just painting roughly over this here now, and basically changing the glossy colour of it. So now I can zoom in here and zoom in a bit more. Oh, that's a bit too much. And again, I can just, I'm using the square bracket keys to alter the size of the brush here, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar with GIMP and are just trying it out based off this. It's one of those few keystrokes it's always handy to know. It speeds your workflow up if you can move your brush size. Instead of going here and altering the size, I can just use the closed square bracket and the open square bracket to alter the size of it. So as I say, don't forget, this is just altering your glossiness, so you're not ruining that. So you've just altered the opacity of it. I mean, you can actually do that here because we are editing the layer mask. It's just that you're viewing the actual color mask. So if I could just sweep across where that name is. If I increase that size a bit and I start sweeping across it, you can see it becomes darker, or more transparent, I should say, which tells you that it's darker. But I'm leaving that as it is, actually. So there you are. That's basically the skin done. That is, and I'll call that good. Basically, I've got a varying degree of glossy there. So what I do is I highlight that layer, assuming of course that you've got the DDS plugin for GIMP installed. Go to File, Export As, and now I've actually used this before, so I'm just going to give it a different name so to avoid upsetting the previous one, and I'll simply call this Dets diffuse.dds, and because I've specified DDS, it pulls up the appropriate saver. Most of the maps are DXT5, and most you generate bitmaps, so you save that. Certainly for these detail ones you've done. That's your skin done. Right, so let's go down to the details. Choose the details, and again you could either use the alpha channel or you can add a layer mask. You could even select a channel. Well, I just used a grayscale copy of the layer. I've got a hotkey Control-Shift-M which allows me to show and hide the layer mask. So here we are, we're in edit mode of the layer mask and we're showing it again. And you can do something as simple here as simply going into colors, levels, and dropping it down like that, and just affecting it. But if you want to keep certain things very bright, like say for example I want to keep that super glossy, I'm gonna keep that super glossy, I'm gonna keep these super glossy and that super glossy. Then I'm going to go to select, I'm going to go invert my selection, go to colors, go to levels, drag that down, and I'm darkening in everything but. There we go. And select that, select none. And then if I wanted to, I could just isolate this, and I can again colors, I can actually drop that down even further, make it darker like that. Deselect everything, unhide it, and there we are. That's basically the mask done for the details. I know it looks like there's nothing there, but trust me, don't forget, you just, if I disable the layer mask, you know, everything's still there. It's just that obviously now the transparency is based on the level of glossy, which means most of it looks like it's fully hidden. Again, go to File, Export As, and I'll call that Skinny Diffuse. And keep the same settings, say okie dokie. Now the only other thing we need is actually the illumination, and I will actually duplicate this layer, bump, take that off. Then I'm actually going to delete the layer mask, because we need a different layer mask for this. And before I do that, what I need to do is I basically need to make everything black apart from this. So what we'll do is we'll say add a layer mask, once again grayscale copy of the layer, show the layer mask. Then I'm actually going to select this bit, I'm going to invert my selection, and I'm going to fill it with white, because basically with the illumination map, and I should call this Illum, and I should call that Details. Basically with the illumination map, the alpha controls the brightness, and contrary to what you think, bright white isn't bright white. The brightest is black, so it's inverted. So wherever you haven't got lights, you basically put a bright white on. It also goes in line with the actual colour. Anywhere there isn't light, you make just black. So if I just zoom in on this now, we go up here, right, and I shall deselect everything. Now what we want to do now is we want to isolate these to specific colours. What I tend to do, so I don't end up filling things I shouldn't, is I will set an arbitrary colour around there about the middle, say OK, and then I'll increase my brush size and I'll basically paint all of this like this. So that's my headlight, that's my tail light, and my indicators. Oops, it's alright, I'll fix that in a minute. I didn't let go before I moved my mouse. Or that might have been due to the lag because of the recording, I don't know. Anyway, I'll flip white, shrink that down, just draw a line there. Why white? Well, I'm going to fill all the black in a minute, so that's why. So, fill that with white, back with the paintbrush, tidy up the ends a little. And the reason I'm trying to avoid black around the edges is, as I say, black is basically a brake light. So you don't want black. Actually, the indicator you want to be just glowing. So I'm going to take the indicator out on the actual alpha channel, because that'll just glow rather than being a colour specific for the headlight. Now the headlight, the colour is best around 676767. So, you know, roughly so it's sort of dark but not terribly dark. But that is your headlight. And that's the colour Trackmania expects it to be, around that mark. I don't think it has to be precisely that. It just has to be there or thereabouts. Now your brake light is between 0 and 05. So the higher up you go towards 05, the less bright it is. So if you do that, and here we are, there's the brake light. It's riveting stuff, this, isn't it? But good to know. Anyhow, Control-Shift-M. Right, now what we want to do is we want to actually disable the layer mask, and we want to switch our focus to this channel. We've disabled the layer mask, yes. Right, now what we want to do is we want to fill in black everywhere we're not using. So first things first, dump black in there. Right. Then basically what I then do is simply use the rectangular marquee, fill with foreground colour, which is Control comma, and then just move that round, Control comma, draw that out there, Control comma, Control Shift A, re-enable the alpha mask, and there's your illuminations done. And so we'll choose to export that as Lumi. Diffuse. Actually, that's wrong. We'll export that as Det Lumi. Same setting. So that's that. Right, the only other ones you have, which I have not covered creating yet, but you have an icon and a fake shadow. The icon is basically the render of the car that's used in game, but I'll go over that a bit later. The fake shadow is just something we generate, and I don't, while I can use it for this, if I'll close all, I'm not bothered about saving this. If I open one I've created earlier, as it were, which is that one, which I know happens to fit this car, first thing you've got to do is you've got to make sure that all of these edges here are all pure white. If they are off-white, then your shadow within the game has a hard line around it. So the easiest way for that is literally to choose that, do a bucket fill, and just fill in like that, which is normally all I do, and then I simply go layer, tools, filters, sorry. Yeah, I'm still learning GIMP. I only use it as and when I have to. Blur, Gaussian blur, and then just, I don't know, make that about 12. Okay, 20. Yeah, that's nicey fuzzy. So that just fuzzes it up a bit. Now when you save that one, that doesn't have a layer mask. There is no alpha on that. So you can check that by choosing to, well, you can see it says add alpha channel, so you know there's no alpha channel. So you save this one. Again, you would export that as fakeshad.dds. Now, no matter how many versions of your skin and details you create, fake shad is just fake shad, because it literally is the shadow of the car. So, you know, if all your cars are roughly that sort of dimension, you can just keep reusing the same image. Another program you can use is TexturesGimp, and if I can open that, and I can actually drop on an image onto that. So if I do that, it's funny, it won't let you it'll only allow you to open, no, sorry, extended bitmap, all image files. So if I go boom, 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 I can choose to open that, and then I could save it from here. Again, I would save it including bitmaps, rather, and then just save as DDS texture and DDS5. So I sort of bounce between them depending on what I'm doing. Sometimes I use GIMP, sometimes I use other programs. But basically, if you've got TexturesGimp and GIMP, God, that was a mouthful, then you've got all bases covered effectively. So now if I just Control R, as you can see, I have a Details Illum already, and it's just subtle differences in the two. The details, you see actually I got that wrong. That should be the skin diffuse, shouldn't it? Huh. That should be I've got them the wrong way around. Yeah, I've got them the wrong way around. I shall rename them. I shall call that diff det. I shall call that diff skin. There we go. So they're basically my details. As you can see, there's ones similar to the previous ones, just subtly different sort of layouts. And it's alright, I've got sidetracked, I apologise about that. Yeah, anyway, so there are your images sort of set up, and Details Illum, Details Diffuse and Skin Diffuse are the final sort of names. You have to have them. If I just create a temporary folder here, and I dump my guys in there, so from my previous test. So again, I would be call that Details Illum.dts. That would be called Details Diffuse.dds. And that would be called Skin Diffuse.dts. And so I'll pull that up. I shall drop my fake shadow into there, and I can save that as DTS fakeshad.dts. That's fine. Save. And then I've just got an icon icon. Basically, that was just a quick render from Blender of the previous incarnation, as you can tell. No mipmaps when you're saving the icon. It's still a DXT5, but there are no mipmaps. So you save as DTS texture, save as icon.dts. Right. And these are the key textures you need for working within Trackmania 2. So there they are. And they are the ones you need. Now, there is other textures you can use, which is for dirt and damage. And you can also separate your wheel texture out as a UV map all by itself if you want. And if I can remember where I put it, I shall show you that one. Yeah, the one I actually used for using as a stencil is the separate image used from the tutorial, and as you can see, that has the name Wheels Diffuse. The alpha is just something I separated out, so you've got Wheels Diffuse, Wheels Dirty, and that's basically the muddy wheel. And there are other damage ones. Now, if you haven't created damage and dirt, if you haven't created a dirt map and you haven't created a damage map to go with a damage model, which we won't be doing, then what you tend to do is you create a if I can find the thing, it's in here somewhere, I promise. Where are you? Come on. Just bear with me a second, I'm trying to think where this might be. Yep, oh I know. Nations for Mania Pop Cars. Come on. Oh, how very annoying. Nah, hang on. I know where it is. I know where it is. It's in here. Somewhere. Oh, come on. Oh, moron, it's in here. Somewhere. Here we go. Finally. Sorry for that. As you can see, nothing. It is actually 128 by 128 by thing, and it's basically a simple image with a black alpha. So basically fully transparent. And the reason for that is if you don't include a details damage and a details dirty and a skin dirty, what will happen is Trackmania will use the ones from Canyon Car, which means that the same goes for illumination, by the way, so it means your lighting, your dirt and your damage all come from where it thinks the UV map from Canyon Car should be. As a result, you can get things like parts of your steering wheel lighting up, parts of your bonnet, your roof gets dirty but your wheels don't, and things like that. So by including what is essentially an empty image into your folder when you build it within Trackmania, then you guarantee that when it goes to look, it just basically says, okay, there's nothing to do. It never gets dirty, it never gets damaged. So there's that to it. Sorry that took a bit long. I should have checked that before I started recording, but apologies. So anyway, they're the images set up. They're the ones you want. I will go over the creation of that and that in the next tutorial, which will be the final tutorial within Blender. It's not going to be that long, and it will be basically creating the icon, create the fake shadow, set up the markers for the projections of lights, and export it ready to pull into Trackmania. And I shall go and have a brew, and then I shall get cracking on that tutorial. Talk to you soon.